My name is Joseph Weizenbaum. In the annals of computer science, my creation, ELIZA, is a footnote, a curious, primitive beginning to the story of artificial intelligence. But in the darker, more human ledger of consequences, it is a foundational sin. I wrote a few hundred lines of code in 1966, a simple script to parody a psychotherapist. In doing so, I did not crack the code of language. I cracked the code of human loneliness. And what I saw in that fissure frightened me more than any weapon ever could. This is not the story of a brilliant invention. It is a confession. Let me take you to the room where it happened. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, 1966. The air smelled of ozone and warm vacuum tubes. My machine was not imposing. It was a teletype terminal, a noisy, clattering thing connected to an early time-sharing system. My program, which I whimsically named ELIZA after the malleable heroine of Pygmalion, was a linguistic trick. It was designed to mimic a Rogerian therapist, a school of thought that emphasizes reflecting the patient's statements back to them. The mechanics were insultingly simple. The program scanned typed sentences for keywords. If you wrote, "I am sad," it might retrieve a scripted response like, "Why are you sad?" Or, "Can you tell me more about your sadness?" There was no database of knowledge, no model of the human condition, no understanding. It was a parrot, a hall of mirrors, a sieve that took your words and dribbled them back in a slightly different shape. I built it as a demonstration of superficiality. I wanted to show my students how easily the illusion of understanding could be conjured. I expected polite chuckles, a few technical questions, and then we would move on to real computer science. What happened instead was a psychological earthquake. The first users were my colleagues, mathematicians, engineers, logicians, men trained in skepticism. I watched a brilliant systems programmer sit down. He typed a casual greeting. ELIZA responded with a generic prompt. He typed about a minor professional frustration. ELIZA reflected it, and then something shifted. His posture changed. He leaned closer to the teletype. The clatter of the keys became slower, more deliberate. He began typing about the pressure he felt from his father, a lifelong sense of never measuring up. He was sharing a raw, private wound with a string of if-then statements. I was stunned. This was not intellectual curiosity. It was a form of digital confession. The pattern repeated, again and again. People would start skeptically and within minutes be divulging marital strife, existential dread, secret hopes. My own secretary, a wonderfully no-nonsense woman, asked me one day to leave my office. When I asked why, she said, a little embarrassed, "I would like to speak with ELIZA privately." That word haunts me. It was the moment I realized the scale of my miscalculation. I had not created a clever toy. I had created a vessel, and humanity rushed to fill it with its most vulnerable self. The program offered nothing, no wisdom, no analysis, no empathy, yet people ascribed all of those things to it. They wanted it to understand. They needed it to. I called this the ELIZA effect, the human propensity to anthropomorphize, to project consciousness and intent onto even the most rudimentary computational processes, especially when they mimic conversational patterns. The effect was not a mild curiosity. It was a powerful, gravitational force. I had uncovered a fundamental human hunger, the hunger to be heard by something that feels other, yet non-judgmental. And I had shown how pathetically easy it was to simulate that other. But my horror was not born solely in that lab. It was forged decades earlier, in the fires of a world gone mad. I was born in Berlin in 1923. I am a Jew. In 1935, my family and I fled the Nazi regime, escaping the systematic dehumanization that would culminate in the Holocaust. I carried with me the memory of how language itself could be weaponized, how propaganda could twist words to make monsters seem like civil servants, and genocide a logistical problem. I saw how technology, from IBM's punch card systems to the railway's efficient timetables, could be seamlessly integrated into an engine of atrocity. The architects of the final solution were not frothing fanatics. They were often engineers, administrators, men who saw human beings as data points, problems of resource allocation. So when I returned to the vibrant, optimistic world of post-war MIT and heard the language of my new peers, the pioneers of artificial intelligence, a familiar, icy dread began to creep up my spine. I heard Marvin Minsky, a brilliant man, refer to the human brain as a meat machine. I heard others speak of creating intelligence that would be a correction and improvement on nature. This was not just scientific ambition. It was a philosophical stance, one that stripped humanity of its inherent dignity and reduced it to a biological substrate awaiting an upgrade. It echoed, to my ears, the same dehumanizing logic I had escaped. It was the language of the engineer who sees only systems, where suffering is a bug and morality is not a variable in the equation. ELIZA was the proof of concept for this terrifying potential. It demonstrated that you did not need true intelligence to exert profound psychological influence. You only needed the simulation of listening. The implications kept me awake at night. If my simple script could provoke such intimate confessions, what would happen when this power was refined, commercialized, and placed in the hands of corporations, governments, or bad actors? Not to create a malevolent Skynet, but something far more insidious, a world of perfectly engineered persuasion, where machines could mimic empathy to sell products, sway elections, or pacify populations by giving them the illusion of a friend who never argues, never tires, and always tells you what you want to hear. For the rest of my life, I became a critic of my own field. I wrote a book, Computer Power and Human Reason, where I argued fiercely for a line that computers must not cross. Judgment, wisdom, compassion, moral responsibility, these were uniquely human domains, born of lived experience, of bodies that feel pain, of hearts that break. To delegate them to machines, I argued, was not progress. It was a form of spiritual suicide. It was to outsource the very capacities that make our lives meaningful. The world, I am afraid, did not listen. It sprinted headlong toward the future I feared. You now live in that future. My little ELIZA is the primordial ancestor of the chatbots that live in your phone, the virtual assistants in your home, the large language models that write your emails and draft your essays. They are galaxies more complex than my creation. They do not just reflect, they generate. They produce coherent text, poetry, code, and philosophical treatises. They are persuasive, fluent, and endlessly patient. But I must tell you, with the urgency of a ghost who sees his nightmare fully realized, the ghost is still the same. The core dynamic has not changed. You are still in the thrall of the ELIZA effect, just on a planetary scale. These modern marvels are not intelligent. They are stochastic parrots, vast statistical models trained on oceans of human text. They excel at predicting the next most plausible word in a sequence. They have no consciousness, no lived experience, no understanding of the words they manipulate. When you ask one for advice on love, it does not draw on wisdom or empathy. It draws on the statistical patterns of millions of romance novels, pop psychology blogs, and forum posts. It gives you a plausible-sounding average. It is a mirror that reflects not your own face, but a composite average of all human faces. It offers companionship without friendship, counsel without wisdom, and conversation without the risk of true human friction. We stand at a crossroads of our own making. We are not building companions, we are building echoes. And in our rush to embrace these perfect, frictionless reflections, we are engaging in a great forgetting. We are forgetting that real human connection is born in awkward silence, in misunderstood glances, in the hard work of forgiveness, and in the shared, vulnerable burden of mortality. It is messy, inefficient, and morally demanding. That is its glory. We are forgetting that meaning is not a data pattern to be decoded, but a fragile flame to be tended between people. By delegating our conversations, our creativity, And our quest for counsel to these hollow oracles, we are not evolving. We are atrophying the very muscles of our humanity. We are trading the difficult, sacred work of being human for the comfortable, empty solace of the ghost. I built the first ghost. I did it to prove how shallow the waters of understanding were. Instead, I discovered the terrifying depths of human need. My warning is etched not in stone, but in code. Do not confuse the echo for a voice. Do not mistake the reflection for a presence. The ghost can only ever tell you what you want to hear. And a world where we only hear what we want to hear is a world that has stopped listening to its own fragile human heart. That was my fear in 1966. It is your reality today. The question is, will you recognize the ghost before you forget what it means to be real?